Some confessions squeeze your chest so hard that they turn everything you've never said into mountains that grow heavier with time. Today, I want to share the impact this suffocation has had on me and the secret I've been keeping close to my heart. I admit that at the age of 60, something happened that made me feel more alive than ever. That morning, the most unexpected thing happened. The hot water in the bathroom broke down again. The broken faucet and the chaos in my life made me realize that since my husband's death, my life has been a repetition of loneliness, silence, and daily chores. Whenever there is something to be repaired at home, I can only pick a plumber at random from the phone book. A young voice came over the phone, low and steady. "I can go there today." There was something in his voice that I couldn't describe, but it made me curious. I tried not to pay too much attention to it. After all, it was just a tap, but when the doorbell rang, everything changed. When I opened the door, the young man standing in front of me was full of energy and instantly dispelled the dullness of life. Otis dropped his toolbox from his shoulders to the floor by the door, which led to the bathroom. He asked, and I hesitated for a moment before reaching out into the hallway. Yes, through that door. If you want to be the first to know these fascinating secrets, subscribe and don't forget to turn on the notifications. Please watch the video to the end, because things are about to get really weird. I led him to the bathroom door. The young man's burly frame filled the narrow hallway. He was wearing a thin shirt, and his muscles were clearly visible. For a moment, I couldn't help but stare at him. It had been a long time since I had seen such a body. When he entered the bathroom, he did so with such confidence that it felt as if he wasn't just here to fix the tap, but to open a door that had been locked for years. "Is this the tap you're asking about?" He looked at the old tap on the countertop, and I stuttered a little. Why was I so nervous? It's just a repair job, I keep telling myself, but my mind stubbornly wants to make up a different story. Otis bends down to inspect the underside of the sink, and the muscles under his shirt become even more defined. I realize I'm holding my breath, without even realizing it. "This is a bit of an old system," he says, checking the pipes with his hands, "but we can fix it. It might take a few hours." His calm, confident voice catches me off guard. For years, I've never interacted with anyone so young and so confident. Maybe it wasn't about that, maybe it was something that I hadn't felt for a long time that had started to surface. I was about to leave the bathroom when Otis turned around and his eyes locked with mine. He pointed to a small leak in the bathroom and asked me, "Can I get a towel from over there?" I put my hand to my face, embarrassed, and of course I said, yes, quickly. I walked over and opened the cabinet, but when I handed him the towel, my hand trembled as I opened the door. Our hands touched, and I could feel the tiny contact resonate through my entire body. In that moment, I realized that this was not just a simple repair job. The brief silence between us seemed to carry the weight of years of expectation. He said thank you and got back to work, but that glance had completely shaken me. I kept wondering if it was just a momentary impulse on my part, or if this young man had awakened something that had been frozen around me for years. While Otis bent over the faucet, I paced the bathroom, my hands not knowing what to do, either fiddling with each other or clutching the counter. The silence in the room began to suffocate me, but it was his presence that really made my chest feel tight. My eyes drifted to him involuntarily. His youth, energy, and focus made me wonder why, but something within me awoke that I hadn't felt in years. I felt I had to say something. Not many young plumbers say that. I realized I was being redundant and said, "How long have you been doing this?" Otis paused and glanced over his shoulder at me. I felt a warm rush of blood to my face as his gaze met mine, but he clearly didn't want my attention. 5 years, he said. He returned to his work. I was curious. How old are you? I ask with a hint of admiration. Without hesitation, he says 26. I'm surprised that he's so young, but at the same time, his youth makes my heart flutter, exciting me and at the same time inexplicably attracting me. I say, trying to smile, if you tell me you're 26, I won't believe it at all, you look much more mature. Otis replies immediately, but I notice a slight change in his face. as if what I said took him by surprise. After a few seconds of silence, he continued working. His professionalism helped me to pull myself together a little, but my frivolous side was still there. After the repair was finished, I tried to change the subject, saying that I had a great coffee machine and that everyone said my coffee was fantastic. He paused, his shoulders tensing, and glanced at me again, as if he were calculating something. Thanks, but I still have work to do today and I need to get it done quickly. I can't deny that I'm a little disappointed, but it's clear that Otis is intent on doing things professionally. Perhaps that's what makes him so charming. He takes his work very seriously and has never let up on his professionalism, even at such a young age. After the work was done, I noticed that he glanced at me several times as he packed up his toolbox. There was something in his eyes, something attractive, curious, and hesitant. When everything was done, he put the toolbox back on his shoulder and said, "The hot water should be working properly now. If there's a problem, just give me a call and I'll help you out." I thanked him for solving the problem so quickly, and I suppose that's the advantage of being young. He gave a small smile this time, but still didn't break his professional demeanor. He walked towards the door, paused for a second as if he wanted to say something, but he didn't. He just nodded at me and then left. I felt a connection forming between me and the young man. Something was happening that shouldn't have been happening, but I didn't know where it was going. All I knew was that it was the first time in a long time that my heart had been racing. I couldn't help asking myself, was this just a plumbing problem or had this young man entered my life to change something? The next morning, when I went into the bathroom to take a shower, I noticed that the faucet was still only providing cold water. I wondered if I had ever been so happy about a malfunction. My hands were shaking a little as I found Ortiz's number in my contacts and dialed. My heart raced when the phone rang. "Hello, Ortiz," I said, my voice tinged with desperation. "I think the tap you fixed yesterday is broken again. I'm really sorry, but could you come back again?" Ortiz's voice was as professional as ever, but he hesitated for a moment, making sure that this time I would bring some spare parts so that he could fix it properly. "I bet I can fix it in an hour." I thanked him and hung up the phone, a strange feeling of excitement welling up inside me. This time I wanted to be prepared, but at the same time I wanted to appear unprepared. As I rummaged through my wardrobe, my hand reached for my favorite black lace nightdress, the kind of comfortable clothes that make you feel like $1 million. I tried to convince myself, but I knew when I looked in the mirror that it wouldn't work. The doorbell rings, and I take a deep breath and open the door. Otis's eyes wander over me for a second, but he quickly pulls himself together. He's carrying a tool kit and some plumbing parts. I say, hoping that my attire doesn't bother you too much. "This faucet is driving me crazy." Otis avoids my gaze and heads for the bathroom door. "No problem," he says. "This time I'll fix it properly." I follow him into the bathroom, and he bends down to work on the faucet. I notice every movement of his body, his hands are quick and skilled, but he seems a little nervous. "Does this sort of thing happen a lot?" I try to break the silence. The thin fabric of my nightshirt rubbing against my skin makes me feel bolder. "I mean, do the things you fix sometimes break again?" Otis answers without looking up, but this time I'm sure it'll be fine. I've got all the parts one might need. "You're very attentive," I said with a smile. "I think you're very capable for someone so young." As I reached to turn the tap, my hand accidentally brushed lightly against his arm. Otis froze for a moment, but quickly continued with his work. He didn't even look at me, but I could feel his tension. "I just want to do my job well," he finally said, his voice a little lower. There was a moment of silence, and his aloof attitude emboldened me even more. When he leaned over to check the pipes under the tap, I touched his back with my hand. "It's really hard to find someone as skilled as you," I said, my voice taking on a faintly joking tone. This time Otis straightened up and looked at me. There was something in his eyes, uncertainty, tension, an attempt to control it. He said Sarah's name, as if trying to keep his distance. After that, the work was almost finished. "I won't disturb you any longer," but the harshness in his voice seemed to disappear in an instant. Watching him try to extricate himself from this situation, something stirred deep inside me, an excitement and longing I hadn't felt in a long time. I didn't know how much longer this tension could last, but we were already at the limit, and who was willing to cross that line was entirely up to us. Otis leaned over to fix the faucet, and I leaned against a nearby cabinet and began to observe him. With every movement I made, the thin fabric of my pajamas clung more closely to my body, creating a rather provocative posture. Otis pretended not to notice, but I didn't miss the slight tremor in his hands. The tremor proved that he was struggling with himself. "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" I asked, my voice tinged with a hint of teasing. Otis' head continued working, but his breathing seemed to have quickened. He replied curtly that it was a piece of cake. I said, "Then why does it break again every few days?" I pretended to bend down to get a towel from the cupboard, at which point the thin straps of my pajamas slipped off my shoulders. The feeling of wearing my pajamas gave me more courage. Otis looked up at me, his eyes lingering for a moment before quickly returning to his work, but this time he moved faster, as if he wanted to solve the problem as quickly as possible. "Maybe there was something else in the bathroom causing the problem," he said, tightening the faucet, but his voice trembled a little, trying to sound more determined. "Or maybe I said I was leaning against the cabinet, or maybe the problem was just that I hadn't found the right touch." I let the sentence hang in the air, and the silence suddenly became thick, and the tension in the small bathroom became almost unbearable. Otis is silent for a moment, then he puts down his tools and stands up, slowly. But the expression on his face is full of conflict, between control and desire, and he tries to resist the urge. I move closer to him, our distance less than a few inches. I can hear his breathing. "Otis," I say, my voice barely a whisper, but before I can finish, his hand is on my waist. Sarah's lips grew tense, trembling with every second. Otis's body trembled, indicating what was about to happen. Soon, the silence between us was broken, and only our breathing and heartbeat remained. At that moment, everything collided. "Sarah, we shouldn't do this," he said, but this time his voice was weak and full of helplessness. "Really," I said, leaning in close to him, "are you sure, Otis?" At that moment, he hesitated, as if unable to bear it, and then unexpectedly kissed my lips. Our kiss started slowly and uncertainly, but soon the passion between us exploded. We closed our eyes and held each other tightly. Every second, Otis pulled me closer, and we started walking towards the bedroom, bumping into the walls along the way. Our hands were entwined, and our hearts were beating wildly. As we entered the bedroom, I felt everything change quickly. Otis had a firm grip on my waist, and I didn't resist. I quickened my pace. It all happened so fast. Before I knew it, we were drawn to each other by our physical attraction. While my brain was still processing everything, my body had already surrendered to him. When we reached the bedroom, everything suddenly fell apart. Otis' t-shirt was in the bathroom, his pants were on the floor by the bed, and my thin pajamas were in the hallway, dragging on the carpet. It was all a mess, but we both calmed down. We lay in bed, close to each other, our bodies still touching, our breathing linked. It all happened so fast that for a moment it seemed as if time had stopped. I can hardly describe how I felt. I felt as if I were in the middle of an ocean, with Otis's strong arms around me. My eyes were closed, but somehow I could still hear everything. "Can you breathe?" I asked with a smile, resting my head on his chest. My hand is still on his body, and I can feel every movement he makes. "Yes," says Otis, his voice trembling, slow and firm. "I think so, but I've never felt like this before." Because there is silence for a few seconds in that moment. Otis's breathing becomes rapid, and I can't ignore it. I say, my lips warmer than his, "So what do we do now, Sarah?" "I don't know, but I think everything is complicated, just like it is now," he said, his hands running through my hair. "But one thing is for sure, being here with you at this moment is better than anything else." At that moment, I forgot about the time, and everything in my mind became blurry. I was just enjoying this moment, but suddenly my eyes regained clarity, and I wondered if this moment was really a crazy moment, or a more important moment. How should we explain it? I asked with a slight smile. Otis looked at me, his eyes full of hesitation and intense longing. He said, I don't think we need an explanation. Sometimes things don't need an explanation. We snuggled close together in the bed, our breaths mingling, lost in the magic of the moment. But still, a question hovered in the back of my mind. Was this a crazy moment, or the beginning of something else? I looked into Otis's eyes and asked, how does this end? Otis, haven't you thought about that? Otis thought for a moment, then took a deep breath. We'll think about it later, he said, running his hands through my hair. For now, let's just enjoy this moment. My emotions shifted within me, but one thing was certain, that moment transcended everything. This night, this moment, would be ours, and no matter what happened, it would be unforgettable. Then there was silence. But this silence gave us a chance to understand the past, the future, and everything in between. If you've come this far, I know you're hooked and can't wait to share in the story. Don't forget to click the follow button, turn on notifications, and leave a comment below the story. I'd love to know what you think, so please leave a comment in the comments section.